Hello, guys. Today I will be reading The Horror of the Old and the New by 12345 underscore couldn't think of a name on AO3. Its rating is teen and up audiences. It has graphic depictions of violence. It's an original work. There are original monster characters and original characters, and there's original monster characters, original non-binary characters, and the additional tags is threats. Summary: They care about Axton, and he asked them to do this, so they will. Despite common belief, Aurora was very, very emotionally attached to the people they worked with, even on the smallest of jobs, which was why they were about to walk into the cave of an old horror. All because of one request. It wasn't even a favor. They didn't owe Axton anything, and Axton wouldn't owe them anything after this. Aurora sighed and took a look at the cave of the old horror. It was giant, nothing compared to the tiny cave Axton lived in.
But that was the difference between old horrors and new horrors. Old horrors got to become part of the mysteries in history. New horrors got posted on TikTok. Aurora honestly wished it was the other way around. It would be funnier that way. And if they hung out with a bunch of mysteries, they'd feel a lot better about themselves. But no, they just had to hang out with Mystery Sighting 12 and Mystery Sighting 27. That would have never happened to old horrors because their victims don't escape them. They kicked the ground in frustration. Not only did they hang out with a bunch of losers, but they were also about to meet the coolest person ever on the order of one of said losers. Death by an old horror would be mercy at this point. They sighed and took a step inside the giant cave. It was dark, impossibly dark, but they didn't need to see to find the old horror. They'd make their way to it, and if they didn't, then the old horror would come to them. Or walked through the darkness until they ran into something that felt like flesh. Gotcha, they thought, but bit to make sure. And yep, it was a fresh corpse, meaning that the old horror was nearby. It also tasted awful, which meant whatever old horror killed the person also made them taste weird. Or they just had a bad diet. According to Axton, that could make people taste bad, and Aurora was inclined to agree with him. Last visit's dinner tasted awful. They shoved the corpse out of the way and put a hand forward to make sure there wasn't a cave wall there. Something dripped down onto them. That was the old horror. They were sweating. "Hello, old horror," they said rather loudly. "So you do know where you are, mortal." "I am aware," they said fastly. "I'm here on behalf of New Horror Axton." "He sends mortals to do his job?" the old horror asked. Aurora nodded. "Yes, he and several other new horrors do." "Pathetic." "It quite is," Aurora agreed. "But I prefer living over dying." That wasn't exactly true. "No, you don't," the old horror said. Aurora blinked, putting their hands to the side and staring. "What? If you did, why would you be here?" That was a scary good point. "You know what I am, what we do, and you walked in here anyway. I will do much worse things to you than Axton will. If Axton kills you, they'll find you in pieces. If I do it, they won't find you at all. Give me Axton's message." "He said to stop killing passerbys before they can make it to his place, or he'll come down here himself," they said, tone blank. New horrors couldn't do anything meaningful to the old. It was simply a fact. Even if they all banded together, they probably wouldn't be able to fight against one old horror. I feel like from the tone you know how pointless that threat is. "I am aware, but it's my job to deliver it, and I have to do my job." It wasn't technically their job, it was just a request from a friend. That doesn't seem like the truth. It isn't, technically. In no part of my job description does it say I have to go into old Horus caves in the middle of the forest, nor does it say I have to do what Axton asks me. Really, a mortal works for him, and he doesn't make them have to obey him? I don't work for him. I'm freelance. Any new horror that needs me to do something, and I'll do it, for a price. What was your price for coming here? Nothing, they admitted. Nothing, the old horror repeated. You came into the lair of an old horror for nothing. Axton asked me to, they explained. They knew logically they didn't need to justify themselves to this, but the old horror seemed so cool and intimidating that it almost made them forget that. Asked, not commanded, the old horror asked. Asked, they confirmed. Axton had simply made a request, and as a friend, were they friends? They weren't sure what they really were to each other. They had decided to abide by it. That is something, the old horror said, tone blank, not giving anything away. But Aurora wasn't dumb. They could tell the old horror was not pleased with this realization. I should give him a talking to, the old horror said, and Aurora felt their whole body panic. There wasn't anything they could do, especially because the old horror could clearly sense the lies on their tongue. About what? They asked, even though they already had a pretty clear idea about what the old horror was going to ask Axton. About why, even if the mortals he sends to do his jobs are not his, he doesn't make them follow him. Do you know which new horrors you worked under? The old horror asked. Aurora used their fingers to count. Axton, Acclima, Ravenia. They stopped. Pretty much every new horror to exist. Really. It is mostly small jobs, the things they don't want to deal with, but I have shown up in a few meetings in new horror steeds. They let a mortal show up to their meetings, the old horror asked, tone lacking anything but surprise. I take notes and pay attention when they decide not to. Why wouldn't they want to listen in, gain information? Because they find it boring, so they have me do it. Why do they trust you won't lead them astray? The old horror asked. Aurora shrugged. Because I'm friendly and nice, they paused. And because if I do that, they can simply poison my dinner. You let them around your dinner, the old horror asked. I eat dinner at Axton's place. Why would you do that? Aurora shrugged. I consider his cave cool, they admitted. He also has the best human flesh around. You eat human flesh. I do. One of the first new horrors I worked for fed me it, and I've eaten it ever since. That is unusual for mortals to do. So is being a freelance contractor for new horrors. I would like you to deliver a message to Axton for me. Aurora's eyes widened, and their eyebrows shot up in surprise. Really? Yes, really. What is it? They asked. To keep his mortals in check, Aurora swallowed, before someone decides to swallow them whole. Aurora did not like that one bit. It wasn't the first time horror had threatened to eat them, but it was the first time the Axton couldn't do anything about it. I'll inform him of that, they said, taking a step back. They ran out of the cave and took in a deep, long breath. They were aware that if the old horror wanted to, it could simply leave the cave. They glanced back at the cave. It appeared to have decided to leave them alone, but they weren't going to stick around to watch it change its mind. They had a message to deliver.